1. Hi, I'm Tom Loucks, Wisconsin Rapids Community Media Coordinator for the City of Wisconsin Rapids. And thank you for watching my show, Making Connections. My guest, Ron Kine.
Tom, it's great to be here, and I'm a big supporter of community access TV and that. I think it's important that we maintain these services, keep people connected to their local community, the local news, in light of all the national domination that's taking place in people's lives. So thanks for your service and what you do for the larger community here.
Alrighty, thank you so much for coming by, and glad that you come by. And we have a list of questions we're going to talk about. So.
Yeah.
All right, Ron, we have a lot of questions to go through in only about 20 minutes. So
Yes.
Can you give me an update what's happening in Washington now?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's good to be back home. Obviously, we have the midterms that are coming up, and I'm encouraging people, please vote. Please participate in our democracy. In fact, vote early. That way you don't have to worry about election lines on election day. And you can get taken off those call lists then, because campaigns do know who's voting and who hasn't. And the later you wait to vote, the more phone calls and harassment you're going to get. So just for your own peace of mind. And our democracy thrives and it works best when more people participate. So I encourage people to let your voices be heard this election cycle. So we're back home in light of the midterms, but we'll be back out in Washington to finish up the fall session. We have a farm bill that's still pending, which is very important to get completed in light of the difficulties our family farmers have been experiencing with low commodity prices the last few years. The trade war has not helped our agriculture producers. They're getting hit with retaliatory tariffs now, making it harder for them to sell their product, let alone get a good price. And in fact, later this afternoon, I'm going to be meeting with a lot of the cranberry producers in this area, getting feedback from them, what the impact these tariffs are having, and what their cost of production is, and what they need to be successful. And I've been having a lot of those farm meetings throughout Wisconsin this fall with dairy producers, corn, soybean, pork producers. It's an important part of Wisconsin's economy, and we have to do everything we can to support our family farmers and make sure they have the tools and the resources they need to be successful. I'm also hoping that we can move forward on an infrastructure investment for Wisconsin, for our country. We're long past due in rebuilding Wisconsin the way it should be, with the roads, the highways, the bridges, the needs that we have to keep the economy growing, with good paying jobs as well. And we're still keeping an eye on healthcare costs. Healthcare is still way too expensive in this country, and there are things that we can be doing by coming together, working together to bring healthcare costs down. I've been calling for hearings on the cost of prescription drugs. We ought to be looking into that, what steps we can take to make prescription medicines more affordable for all Americans who need it. I don't know why we're not negotiating with the drug companies to get a better rate for our Medicare patients. We could be doing bulk rate purchases like we do with our veterans through the VA system. We should be demanding more price transparency, or maybe cross-border sales with Canada, as long as we address the safety concern. All these can help drive down the overall healthcare costs and make it more affordable for all Americans. And we have to stay focused on what we can do to expand those opportunities to more people. And the committee I serve on has jurisdiction over all these items, so I'm intimately involved in all of them.
All right. Well, if you're just joining us here, Tom Loucks with our guest Ron Kine, a congressman, and this is Making Connections. I want Ron just to explain, if you're not sure where you work in the districts, could you just explain that a little bit, and then we're going to go on to the federal deficit, how it's ballooning. So
yeah,
go ahead.
I represent the 3rd Congressional District of Wisconsin, and it's all or part of 19 counties, including Portage and Wood, obviously Point, Wisconsin Rapids area, then all the way over to the Mississippi River and all the way down to Illinois, everything west of Madison. So it's a very large rural geographic area, with Point, Rapids, Eau Claire, La Crosse, Platteville being some of the larger cities, and then a whole lot of rural communities and rural areas too. And it's a great district to represent. And I'm proud that a recent survey showed in Congress that I'm the 2nd most independent member of Congress, 2nd out of 435, because I've been willing to get in the same room with my colleagues, especially those across the aisle, to talk and listen to them. And by doing so, you find areas of common ground and common agreement that you can work on. And I think we need more of that these days in Washington, in Madison, and in all public service, because things have just gotten too nasty. It's too polarized out there. Shouldn't have to be this hard.
Yeah, definitely. You don't need that. We need to work together.
Yeah.
On stuff. So let's just talk about the federal deficit for a minute. I think that's something that, it's a concern amongst everybody in our country. But how about in your area, Wisconsin? What can you do and ensure or help in that area?
Well, I'm very concerned. It's one of my big concerns I have right now as your representative is fiscal responsibility apparently is out the window in Washington. We're looking at close to $1 trillion annual budget deficits at a time of a growing economy and virtually full employment. This is the time when you should be fixing leaky roofs by paying down the national debt rather than adding to it. Instead, we're heading in the opposite direction. And it's a combination. We had a recently enacted tax cut bill, Tom, over the past year, where 83% of the benefit goes to big companies or to the wealthiest 1%. 83% of that tax package. And it's going to add over $2.3 trillion to our national debt over the next 10 years because it wasn't paid for. You pay for it by simplifying the tax code, shutting down a lot of tax loopholes that typically the powerful and the special interests take advantage of, and you're able to do rate reduction for everyone else. That's not what happened in this tax bill. They made it more complicated. It was a huge giveaway to big companies and to the wealthiest 1%, and our children and grandchildren are going to pay the price through these looming large budget deficits in the future. We're going to be borrowing money from China now in order to pay our bills, which you never want to be in a position of doing. I think we need to lead by example, though, as members of Congress. So every year, working with my staff, I find savings in my own office budget that I control, that I return back to the Treasury. That money can only be used for deficit reduction based on legislation that I had offered in the past. And I'm proud to say that, again, with my staff's help, we were able to find over $2 million worth of savings in our own office budget that we return for deficit reduction. It's a small drop in the larger federal pie, but I think we need to lead by example, especially if you're going to be asking other people to sacrifice or take a hit with their programs. So we need to rein in our budget deficits. And not only do we have to get the revenue system aligned right, so it's not just a big giveaway to big companies, but also many of our spending programs. I mean, we've got outdated weapons programs that serve no useful purpose for our military. It doesn't help with force readiness. It doesn't help with the symmetrical threats that we face abroad. Yet every year, Congress keeps appropriating more and more money for these weapons programs, even though, and this is the key, the leadership at the Pentagon is telling us, stop it. We don't need it. We don't want it anymore. It doesn't help our troops. Yet Congress ignores that advice. I still think, under the Farm Bill that I was just talking about, there's still these huge taxpayer subsidies that go to large agribusiness. It's not helping our family farmers. In fact, it's making it worse for them. It's driving more consolidation in agriculture, driving up land values, making it harder for new beginning farmers to enter the occupation or take over farm operations. I've been one of the leading voices of reforming these farm programs so that they're actually working for family farmers back home rather than those powerful special interests in Washington. And I've got battle scars to prove it too, given how well organized they are in DC. And there's savings that can be had in the budget by doing that the right way. And then finally, back to healthcare costs. Healthcare costs is driving everyone's budgets, family budgets, public budgets alike. And there's more we can be doing in order to help drive down those costs to make it more affordable for everyone.
Definitely healthcare, hard one, and today we all need it. Every family needs it. We're all struggling to get through it. Employers are costing more for employers as well. So how do you work with the local business, private or non-private? Governments like us even things are going high for our group, and we're looking at new ways. And with city budgets tight, what do you do? That's our part.
And before coming over here this morning, I was over at Aspirus doing a walkthrough there and meeting with the administration and getting ideas from them on where we can find further healthcare savings. And there are certain things that are in the works right now, mainly due to the Affordable Care Act, or so-called Obamacare. We're trying to transform the way healthcare is delivered so it's more integrated, it's more coordinated, it's more patient-centered, similar to the models that we have around Wisconsin that work very, very well. And then one of the chief issues I've been involved in is changing the way we pay for healthcare. So it's based on the quality or the value or the outcome of care that's given, and no longer the number of things that are done to us, regardless of results. That old fee-for-service system is bankrupting everyone, from those who have to pay out of pocket to private employers to public budgets. Everyone's feeling the impact of that fee-for-service system. And so we got to move to one that values the outcome or quality of care and then pays our providers accordingly. And I want to be pressing down on the accelerator with that rather than pulling back. And then again, back to prescription drugs, which is one of the main cost drivers in the healthcare system. But I also had a good discussion at Aspirus about the opioid epidemic and the task force that's being worked on here in Wood County and how to address the drug addiction. And I'm an old special prosecutor here in Wisconsin, so I had to live in that drug world for a while. I haven't met anyone in law enforcement that thinks we can address that through the criminal justice system. This has to be a public health approach, mental health treatment, counseling, drug treatment programs. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to build the jails or the prisons fast enough in order to deal with this epidemic. And we shouldn't have to. And so I'm really encouraged by the type of collaboration that I'm seeing right here in this community of various people coming together to try to put together a good model plan on how to address the opioid addiction and the crisis that we face, and learning from the best practices and the evidence-based research on what works and what doesn't work. But we got to get out ahead of this, and we're going to need a strong partnership at the federal, state, and local level in order to address it.
Yeah, definitely. And in this area, Wisconsin Rapids, we all know and our viewers know that there's an issue here in this area, and it's been talked about for quite some time. But in the last 5 years, it's become dangerous.
Yeah.
And our local enforcement knows that. Our sheriff candidates are coming in today. That'll be a question for those guys as well, guaranteed. And what are they going to do to help it? And
well, they're on the front lines, but I'm proud I was involved in an effort in Congress recently to pass a bipartisan opioid epidemic bill that will hopefully provide more help and more support and assistance to local communities like this. The key now is making sure that bill is backed up with the resources that our local communities need. You mentioned the sheriffs, but also the drug treatment centers and the behavioral health and early identification programs with children in schools. All this needs to be a part of that larger package. So not only was I involved in drafting the legislation, but I want to be involved now in making sure we back it up with the resources that local communities need to do a good job with it.
Yeah, most definitely. Because law enforcement's going to need some of those people. They're not just out there writing tickets. They need to be a part of the solution. You have them in schools now as liaison officers. Back in my time, and date myself here, it wasn't there.
Yeah.
But now it is, and I think it's going to go into that area even more. And maybe that's an area that's going to happen. I guess we got some more time. I just want to talk about small business. It's very important to me.
Yeah.
It's really where places like Renaissance came about here in Wisconsin Rapids, a basement business. What can you do, or what do you ensure small businesses are investing in, like rural communities too?
Yeah, small businesses really are the backbone of our local economy, and we need to be doing everything we can to support them. It's tough, to keep those doors open. The number one issue I hear though right now, Tom, when I go into businesses large and small, is workforce needs. The labor shortage that we have and how we're going to address that. I've been a big proponent of quality job training programs, so we're matching the skills with the jobs that are being created and are opening in our area. But I also want to keep an eye on the regulatory burden that small businesses have to face. For them, it means a lot when they don't have an in-house department dealing with the regs and the various provisions that they have to comply with. Healthcare costs, as we've mentioned before, major concern for small businesses, and making sure that they're part of a larger pool so they can obtain affordable healthcare coverage for themselves and for many of the employees that they want to be able to cover is important for them. And I've also been involved in making it easier for small businesses create retirement savings opportunities for themselves and their employees. There's a big black hole out there when it comes to retirement savings in the small business community. I've offered legislation called the SAVE Act that directly targets small businesses and simple 401ks, simple IRA plans that they can put in place with relatively low cost and without the liability concerns that have held them back in the past, so we can start filling that retirement vacuum that exists for many of the small businesses and their employees. So there's a lot that I'm focused on in the small business area, and I'm constantly stopping in and listening to them, getting feedback from them, what more they need, to be successful in our communities.
All right. Well, we have about 4 minutes left, and I just want to open the floor to something maybe that you want to mention out to our viewers here that is important on your mind, things that you're working on. I know there's everything from immigration that you hear in the news every day. Just going to give you a few minutes if you want to talk about anything that's not on the list that we haven't.
Yeah, Tom, let me just address something. It's not issue specific. It's more the general state of health of our democracy. I know people are getting very discouraged and very cynical given the back and forth, and things are way too polarized. They're way too hyper-partisan. It shouldn't have to be this way. And your elected representatives owe you a better performance. So being able to get in the same room act like grown-ups, as mature adults, listen to one another, and try to find some areas of common ground that we can work on together and start solving some issues that people are wrestling with back home. And I believe that starts with listening. I do it back home all the time. I have listening sessions, show up in communities, give people a chance to provide feedback. And I don't care who you are, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter. Some of the best ideas that I've heard and I've taken back to Washington are homegrown, right back here, common sense Wisconsin values. There are ways that we could make our democracy work much better. That's why I'm proud I'm the second most independent member of the entire Congress, the fourth most bipartisan member. I believe we need more of that these days in both Washington and Madison, and quite frankly in a lot of local forms of government too, where our listening skills have deteriorated. But it all starts with people participating. And I know it's easy to drop out and be so cynical, who cares, it's an election, my voice doesn't matter. But when people decide not to participate, not to even vote, that means fewer and fewer people are making the decisions for all of us. And that's never healthy in our democracy. So I'll end where I began, by encouraging people, if you haven't registered yet, register, there's still time. If you are registered, vote early. Just get it over with. That way you don't have to worry about the long lines on election day or what type of weather November 6th might bring. We need a very active, engaged citizenship in order to make this country work well. And it starts right here at home.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for all that information and sharing it with our viewers. It's very important that you came down and you got the chance to visit Wisconsin Rapids.
Yep.
And you're probably going to go around and do some more visiting. You went to Spirus earlier today and probably visit our local government over at City Hall.
That's right.
Across the street. So I want to thank you so much
thanks,
again.
Tom. It's a great community.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And I want to thank you guys for watching Making Connections. I'm Tom Loucks. For next time, tune us in on our community media station.